Chapter 3. Birth of a Crime Family Part 3. The Broussards. 1. The Edwards Family Dinner. This opening family dinner scene in Chapter 3 is a richly textured exploration of family dysfunction, communication breakdown, sibling rivalry, and parental authority in The King's Omen. The atmosphere is charged with tension, awkwardness, and unspoken conflicts, setting the stage for complex relational dynamics. Vivid descriptive overview. The dinner table is a stage for discomfort and passive aggression. Everyone's silence and their hesitant exchanges reveal deep fractures in family relationships. Bruce's attempt to break the silence by sharing a small personal victory contrasts with the somber and anxious atmosphere, highlighting his role as a reluctant peacekeeper. The children's behaviors, Kaleb's guilt-ridden silence, Kat's dramatic overacting, Roland's sarcastic interruptions, and Aurora's principled refusal to eat meat, showcase their fractured connections and individual struggles. The sensory details, the unfinished plates, teary eyes, tense glances, angry expressions, and physical actions like Bruce banging the table or Kat's teasing, create an immersive emotional texture of a family teetering on the brink. Aurora's passionate defense of animal rights adds a moral and ideological layer, sparking parental frustration and illustrating generational clashes. Themes of dysfunction and communication, family alienation and noise. Despite physical proximity, the family members are emotionally disconnected, each encased in their own concerns, fears, and resentments. The forced interactions feel more like performances than genuine connections. Sibling rivalry and power struggles. Kat and Roland's verbal jousting reveals ongoing tensions, competition, and unresolved grievances masked by sarcasm and barbs. Parental authority and frustration. Bruce and Bernie's attempts to enforce discipline and maintain order face resistance, reflecting challenges maintaining control amid adolescent rebellion and fractured family authority. Denial and avoidance. The family's discomfort with Jasmine's illness and broader struggles is met with defensiveness and distraction, underscoring avoidance of deeper emotional engagement. Symbolism and emotional texture on eaten food, metaphor for emotional starvation and resistance to nourishment, both literal and familial. Ice cream. Bruce retreating to ice cream reflects seeking comfort amidst chaos, a small escape that contrasts with familial conflict. Physical gestures. The banging of the table symbolizes mounting frustration, a desperate attempt to assert control or demand attention. Character and narrative significance. This scene crystallizes the family's dysfunction and sets narrative tone for internal conflicts driving the novel. Bruce emerges as a weary but determined patriarch striving for unity. The children's distinct personalities and conflicts illustrate varying coping mechanisms and sources of pain. The scene's mix of humor, anger, pain, and awkwardness simulates real family dynamics, grounding the story's broader social and criminal themes in intimate human experience. Bruce attempts to break the ice and restore some sense of normalcy, offering a simple, almost mundane update about work to counteract the heavy mood. His tone suggests discomfort with the family's somber mood and a desire to steer the conversation toward lighter ground. Later, his frustration surfaces as he confronts Kat's dramatics and the overall emotional tension, highlighting his role as strained patriarch trying to enforce order and reason. His insistence on family dinners and support reveals his deep yearning for connection amid dysfunction. Bernie embodies concern mixed with frustration. Her worried mention of Jasmine's illness serves as an emotional trigger within the family. Her insistence on nutritional discipline, urging Aurora to eat meat, reflects traditional parental authority often clashing with children's growing independence or moral beliefs. Bernie's exasperation at Aurora's vegan stance underscores generational and ideological divides, while her appeal to God's design reveals a worldview rooted in tradition and practicality. Aurora is a strong-willed, morally principled child whose refusal to eat meat based on animal rights introduces ethical conflict at the dinner table. Her passionate outburst about animal cruelty juxtaposes innocence with conviction, unsettling the family dynamic. Her joy in learning to draw signals a glimmer of hope and individuality amidst the turmoil. Aurora's character introduces themes of empathy, activism, and resistance to inherited familial norms. Katrina, Kat's dialogue oscillates between sarcasm, performative emotionality, and sharp defensiveness. Her overacting about Jasmine's illness contrasts with Bruce's call for sincerity, suggesting possible manipulation or emotional detachment. Kat's verbal sparring with Roland reveals sibling rivalry and underlying conflicts, masked by humor and antagonism. Her cynicism contrasts sharply with Aurora's idealism, representing complex adolescent struggles with identity and family loyalty. Kaleb is subdued and guilt-ridden, his silence and inability to eat visibly mark his emotional distress. When forced to engage, he struggles to articulate feelings, showing vulnerability to Kat's intimidating gaze. His quiet demeanor and inward focus suggest a sensitive character wrestling with internal conflict and familial tension. Roland serves as the scene's skeptic and realist, injecting sarcastic humor that challenges family theatrics and emotional displays. His bizarre question about bodily functions on an imagined level, questioning the daily routines of a hallucination in regards to Aurora's schizophrenia, introduces absurdity, deflating tension and redirecting focus. His unwillingness to fully engage emotionally reveals detachment or possible resentment within family dynamics. Dialogue dynamics and emotional texture. The dialogue reveals a fractured family trying, but failing, to bridge emotional distances. Patterns emerge of avoidance, conflict, and tentative attempts at communication. The mixture of humor, sarcasm, anger, and tenderness animates a realistic portrait of familial interaction under stress. Each character's verbal exchanges reveal their role: Bruce as reluctant leader, Bernie as disciplinary mother, Aurora as idealistic youth, Katrina as sarcastic firebrand, Kaleb as silent struggler, and Roland as detached observer. Their dialogue layers the family's conflicted emotional landscape, illustrating themes of alienation, loyalty, and the struggle for connection. Paul M. Williams uses food and the manner in which each family member eats to symbolically represent their character traits and emotional states in this family dinner scene in The King's Omen. Food as character symbolism. Bruce. He eats quickly and finishes his plate first, symbolizing his pragmatic, no-nonsense personality and underlying restlessness. His quick departure from the table with his plate to rinse it off reflects his desire to escape conflict and emotional discomfort, showing his role as a reluctant patriarch trying to maintain control amid chaos. Bernie. She barely touches her food, reflecting her worry and emotional distress over family and external troubles. Her frustration at Aurora for not eating meat reveals a traditional, authoritative mindset that values order and respect for sacrifices, food as a representation of parental effort. Aurora. Her refusal to eat meat and her articulate moral stance against animal cruelty demonstrates her strong convictions and idealism even at a young age. Food here symbolizes her ethical rebellion and principled identity within the family dynamic. Katrina. Kat's playful refusal to eat and sarcastic comments about the seriousness around the table highlight her rebellious and attention-seeking nature. Her performance around food mirrors her emotional volatility and tendency to manipulate family interactions. Kaleb. His inability to eat and guilty demeanor signify emotional turmoil and silence, showing how deeply guilt and anxiety consume him. The way he stirs his food without eating represents internal conflict and helplessness. Roland. He eats slowly and thoughtfully, reflecting his skeptical and somewhat detached attitude. His sarcastic interruption about bodily functions shifts tension and reveals a defense mechanism, using humor to cope with discomfort. Food here represents his tentative participation in family rituals, underscoring emotional distance. Eating behavior as personality indicator. The speed and decisiveness with which Bruce eats contrasts the hesitation or refusal of others, suggesting his need for order and quick resolution. The selection of food eaten or avoided. Aurora's vegetables, but no meat. Bernie's emphasis on meat as essential reveals ideological divisions and conflict within the family. The ritual of eating together becomes fraught with tension, and reluctance to eat symbolizes emotional barriers and resistance to connection. Physical actions around food, pushing food away, slow eating, or moving food around, act as unspoken expressions of inner emotional states like guilt, anger, or withdrawal. Conclusion. Food in this scene serves as a rich metaphor for the characters' inner lives and family dynamics. Williams uses not only what the family members eat, but their eating behaviors and attitudes toward food to symbolize their personalities, struggles, and relationships. The dinner table becomes a microcosm of emotional conflict and attempts, both successful and failed, at connection. Broussard family history. The author Paul M. Williams portrays Florence, Reecie, Broussard as an exceptionally ruthless and hardcore figure within Ohio's crime landscape, highlighting her violent and remorseless nature by contrasting her upbringing with her father Cameron Ollie Broussard's tough love and street lessons. Reese's violence and cruelty surpass nearly all others Williams has encountered, save for one Brazilian gangster mentioned as an exception. Her character is framed as a product of her environment and family legacy. Cameron Ollie Broussard is depicted as a feared and respected gangster who played a dual role of both protector and enforcer in his community, blending charitable acts with violent street credibility. The absence of their mother and the hard, unyielding parenting style of their father created a harsh childhood for Reecie and her siblings, shaping them into merciless souls with little empathy or remorse. Reese's admiration for notorious female gangsters like Stephanie St. Clair, Griselda Blanco, Angela Edwards, and Rosa Nunez situates her within a lineage of infamous, powerful women known for their formidable, often brutal leadership styles. Williams uses this background to emphasize that Reese's violence and cruelty are learned behaviors, deeply rooted in survival and power dynamics within her family and community, rather than innate tendencies. Her nickname, Reecie, suggests familiarity and street origins, further grounding her identity within the crime world. Overall, Reecie Broussard embodies the archetype of a fierce, uncompromising gangster forged by family legacy, environmental pressures, and personal ambition, making her one of the most feared figures in the narrative's criminal underworld. 3. Florence and Remy initiation scene. Paul M. Williams uses this harrowing childhood initiation scene with Cameron and his daughters, Florence, Reecie, and Remy, to vividly depict how violence, fear, and cruelty are instilled as survival tools within the Broussard family. Deep scene analysis. Setting and mood. The abandoned warehouse with armed men and a bound. Severely beaten man establishes a brutal, unforgiving world where danger is constant and innocence is stripped away early. The physical environment is oppressive, mirroring the psychological imprisonment imposed by Cameron. Cameron's parenting style. Cameron embodies the cold, harsh mentor who believes showing fear or weakness is deadly in their world. His disgust at Remy's crying and forceful commands, man up, no tears, reflect a philosophy that emotion is vulnerability in the violent streets. He imposes a brutal adult perspective on children, sacrificing their childhood for real-world readiness. Indoctrination and loss of innocence. Cameron's lesson equates survival with ruthlessness. Take the gun and shoot back, instilling a mindset of preemptive violence. The gasoline and fire ritual is a terrifying symbolic act of initiation, literally burning away childhood innocence as the girls watch human suffering and death. This traumatic rite is a gruesome baptism into the family's violent code. Florence's role and growth. Florence's fearful but obedient actions mark the birth of Reecie as hardened product of her environment. Her courage to pour gasoline despite fear signals the making of a feared gangster. Her morbid curiosity, what happens when you pour gasoline, reveals a child grappling with dark realities she must quickly master. Themes of power and submission. Cameron's use of extreme violence under the guise of teaching tough love demonstrates power wielded without empathy. The daughter's forced participation highlights the hereditary nature of violence and the cyclical trap of the criminal underworld. Psychological impact. The scene's graphic imagery, burning flesh, screams, and the smell of fear, shows the destruction of innocence and the forging of a merciless identity. Cameron's emotional pride reveals his belief this cruelty is necessary for success and survival. Narrative and thematic significance. This scene is crucial for understanding Florence Reecie Broussard's origins, explaining her notorious cruelty and reputation as Ohio's most hardcore gangster. The traumatic initiation frames her later actions and personality as shaped by early exposure to violence and ruthless lessons from her father Williams uses this moment to explore how crime families cultivate mercilessness through deliberate psychological and physical conditioning, raising ethical questions about environment, choice, and identity. This initiation scene powerfully sets the tone for Florence Reecie Broussard's character arc, a symbolic and literal birth into a world where brutality is survival and softness equals death. Old Man Bruce's reflection on Cameron Ollie Broussard's brutal rituals and their impact highlights a profound theme in The King's Omen. How exposure to extreme violence and hardened survival tactics from an early age irreversibly shapes one's psyche and morality. Bruce acknowledges Cameron as a sick and twisted dude whose rites of passage were designed to torch the consciences of his daughters, Florence, Reecie, and Remy, forever transforming their innocence into hardened ruthlessness. Bruce's comparison of their childhood trauma to his own experiences, being beaten daily versus learning to kill before puberty, underscores the psychological wreckage such lives incur, regardless of the specific brutal method. His dark humor about corrupting demons emphasizes the depth of moral damage that such environments inflict, suggesting these family histories forge nearly irredeemable characters shaped by suffering and violence. This reflection serves as an introspective moment revealing how childhood trauma and family legacy create criminals not innately evil, but shaped by their harsh realities. It illuminates Florence's merciless nature as deeply tied to her upbringing and the psychological weight of witnessing horrific acts like the warehouse initiation. Bruce's somber musings enrich the narrative by offering insight into the cyclical damage wrought by the violent culture that permeates these crime families. They point to themes of environmental determinism, lost innocence, and the tragic shaping of identity in a world where brutality is both survival and curse. 4. Florence and Remy's failed mission. This intense action scene portrays Florence, Reecie, and Remy Broussard as hardened, ruthless veterans of the criminal underworld, shaped profoundly by their violent upbringing and current realities. Florence's explosive, commanding dialogue, "Put your damn hands up, dumb nigga," reveals her aggressive, no-nonsense personality and her mastery of violence as a tool of control. Her casual smoking during a raid and frustration at having to deal with hesitation, Remy's refusal to kill a child, emphasize her hardened, pragmatic approach to crime. Remy's contrasting compassion and moral qualms highlight internal conflict in the siblings and underscore her more empathetic nature, despite their brutal circumstance. Her refusal to kill a child and protectiveness illustrate a lingering conscience and personal boundaries that clash sharply with Florence's cold pragmatism. The dialogue shows their seamless coordination in dangerous situations, checking for witnesses, managing shooters, and interpreting one another's actions, underscoring their toughness and experience. The tense banter over killing the child witness reveals character depth, the limits of cruelty, and sibling power dynamics. Cam's later conversation with Florence reinforces the gravity of their position within the evolving underworld, framing their struggle as a battle between old guard loyalty and the ruthless mercenaries challenging their dominance. Key themes and character insights. Merciless survival. Florence embodies brutal survival instincts shaped by lifelong violence and loyalty to family codes. Moral ambiguity. Remy's hesitation humanizes the otherwise harsh criminal world, raising questions about conscience amid brutality. Family and loyalty. The sibling relationship is complex, balancing love, frustration, and conflicting worldviews. Changing power dynamics. Cam's commentary reflects shifting criminal alliances and the need for strategic adaptation. The price of the game. The escaping child represents the vulnerability and collateral damage inherent in their violent world. This scene vividly contrasts Florence's unyielding toughness with Remy's flickers of remorse, deepening their characterizations and illuminating the brutal realities shaping their lives and choices in the King's Omen. 5. Kaleb's guilt. In this intense classroom scene from the King's Omen, Kaleb's repeated drifting into sleep and subsequent terrifying visions of Jasmine's muteness and suffering illustrate his deep psychological guilt and trauma. The vivid hallucinations of Jasmine screaming without a voice and the acid burning her throat symbolize Kaleb's internalized torment and the burden of responsibility he feels for the harm caused. Kaleb's interaction with the teacher underscores his alienation. His apology and visible distress contrast with the teacher's institutional pragmatism and mild reprimand, reflecting a disconnect between Kaleb's emotional world and the external expectations. His distressed outburst disrupts the classroom, marking him as visibly unstable and isolated within his peers. The teachers offer to send Kaleb to the principal, but allowing him a hall pass instead shows a reluctant compassion mixed with a procedural approach to managing student behavior. Kaleb's urgent exit from the classroom signals his attempt to escape overwhelming emotions and regain composure. Psychological and thematic significance. Guilt and trauma. Kaleb's experiences of hallucinations signify intense guilt and unresolved trauma relating to Jasmine's condition, serving as a haunting reminder of consequences beyond his control. Isolation. The scene highlights Kaleb's sense of isolation, as neither teacher nor peers fully grasp the depth of his inner struggle. Conflict between internal and external worlds. The clash between Kaleb's psychological pain and the classroom's structured environment emphasizes themes of alienation and misunderstood suffering. Symbolism of voice and silence. Jasmine's loss of voice parallels Kaleb's voiceless anguish and desire to express remorse, but being trapped in silence or misunderstood. This moment powerfully foregrounds Kaleb's emotional fragility and the heavy shadow cast by the broader narrative's events, deepening the novel's exploration of guilt, redemption, and the psychological toll of crime and loss. 6. Reecie going rogue. In this charged scene from the King's Omen, Florence, Reecie, Broussard navigates the ruthless, mercenary-controlled territory of Columbus with deadly decisiveness. Embodying her reputation as a hardened gangster shaped by violence and unyielding survival instincts. Her brazen execution of the corner boy underscores her volatility and readiness to enforce power at any cost, emphasizing a reputation reinforced by fear and swift retribution. The intense exchange with her father Cameron Cam reveals the complexities of their relationship, marked by a mixture of toughness, authority, love, and fear. Cam's violent reprimand and physical domination highlight his role not only as a feared crime patriarch, but as a demanding father shaping Florence's path with harsh lessons. His emphasis on using intellect over weapon reliance reveals a strategic mindset behind their family's brutal legacy. The revelation about Remy's sexual assault and the brutal vengeance exacted by Cam adds layers of trauma, loyalty, and protection to their family's history. Remy's suffering and Cam's ferocious retaliation reveal the dark toll of street life on personal lives and the intertwining of violence with family bonds. Florence's conflicted response, feeling remorse for Remy's plight while insisting on prioritizing the family business, illustrates her internal struggle between compassion and ambition. Cam's rare show of affection, coupled with his counsel for strategic restraint, frames the broader struggle for power amid changing criminal landscapes, where survival depends on both strength and wisdom. Key themes and character dynamics: violence and power. Florence's unflinching aggression, contrasted with Cam's calculated authority, portray inherited brutality moderated by experience. Family loyalty and trauma. The revelation about Remy deepens understanding of familial bonds forged in pain and vengeance, affecting motivations and relationships. Strategic survival. Cam's warning about evolving threats and the need for wisdom over recklessness highlight the ongoing challenges to their empire's survival. Internal conflict. Florence embodies the tension between hardened street smarts and residual humanity shaped by family trauma. Legacy and succession. Cam's insistence on family continuity and measured action illustrates the theme of legacy within crime dynasties. This scene vividly portrays the fierce, complex dynamics of the Broussard family, painting Florence as both a product and architect of a violent legacy, deeply intertwined with loyalty, loss, and the ruthless politics of power in the King's Omen. 7. Kaleb visits Jasmine. This scene powerfully captures Kaleb's emotional and psychological turmoil as he faces the reality of Jasmine Watkins' hospitalization. The detailed description of Kaleb's slow, labored climb up the stairs in Cleveland Clinic symbolizes his internal struggle, each step representing a painful approach to confronting the consequences of his actions. His hesitation to take the elevator highlights his reluctance to face Jasmine too quickly or abruptly, reinforcing his desire to mentally prepare for the encounter. Upon entering Jasmine's room, the stark medical imagery, machines, tubes, and her frail state overwhelms Kaleb, triggering a panic attack that vividly externalizes his guilt and fear. His tripping over equipment and frantic apology to Jasmine, despite his silence, convey his profound remorse and helplessness in the face of the damage caused. The nurse's attempt to help and Kaleb's angry rejection show his isolation and emotional fragility, emphasizing the clash between his inner chaos and the outside world's structured attempts to assist. His storming out reflects a temporary retreat from confronting his pain. Symbolism and themes. Stairs versus elevator symbolize Kaleb's psychological readiness, the slow stairs reflecting hesitation and dread, the elevator representing an unwanted sudden confrontation. Medical environment. The clinical setting underscores the gravity of Jasmine's condition, making Kaleb's guilt and fear more palpable. Panic attack. Physical manifestation of mental anguish, representing an overwhelming burden of responsibility and trauma. Isolation. Kaleb's reaction isolates him from peers and authority figures, heightening themes of alienation and misunderstood suffering. Silence and voice. Jasmine's inability to speak parallels Kaleb's struggles with expressing remorse and seeking forgiveness. This emotionally charged scene deepens Kaleb's character arc, illustrating the profound psychological impact of the narrative's central tragedy and spotlighting key themes of guilt, redemption, and the human cost of crime. 8. Cameron and Darius meeting. This pivotal scene heightens the tension and stakes surrounding Florence, Reecie, Broussard, and her family's criminal empire. Florence's refusal to hold Remy's son and her cold declaration that one day Remy will have to teach the boy the game underscores her ruthless pragmatism and focus on legacy over sentimentality. Her hardened demeanor contrasts with Remy's calmer, more nurturing presence, highlighting differing approaches to survival and family within the brutal world they inhabit. The tense and dangerous negotiation between Cameron Ollie, Cam, and Darius marks a turning point for the Broussard family. Cam's cautious strategy of hosting the meeting at home reflects his understanding of power dynamics and the need to maintain control even when challenged. Darius's mocking, confident demeanor and the subsequent betrayal by Cam's men vividly depict the savage, treacherous nature of the criminal underworld and the erosion of loyalty. Cam's awareness of shifting allegiances and the generational power struggle, young lions get bred, and birds fly from their nests, frames the clash between old guard and rising forces. The cold execution of Cam and Darius's ruthless assertion of dominance punctuate the violent cycle of power and retribution, defining the narrative. Florence's raw grief and rage as she discovers her father's bullet-riddled body humanizes her fierce exterior, showing the deep personal losses beneath the gangster persona and setting the stage for possible vengeance or transformation. Themes and character insights, legacy and ruthlessness. Florence's insistence on preparing the next generation for crime underscores the cyclical nature of violence and survival. Betrayal and power shifts. The meeting with Darius symbolizes the precariousness of power and the brutal reality of turf wars and betrayal. Family and loyalty. Despite the coldness, familial bonds drive characters' motivations, with Cam's death representing a profound loss to the family empire. Humanization through grief. Florence's emotional breakdown reveals vulnerability beneath her hardened exterior, deepening her character complexity. Violence as language. The bloody conclusion encapsulates the inescapable violence that governs their lives and determines fates. This intense scene crystallizes the high stakes, emotional depth, and relentless violence at the heart of the king's Omen, illustrating the personal cost of power within crime dynasties and the painful legacies that define them.